Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
My brothers and sisters, the Lord is with you.
And also with you.
We continue listening to God speak to us from the gospel in the tradition of Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to give me my share of the inheritance." Jesus replied, "Friend, who has set me up as your judge or arbiter?" Then he said to the crowd, "Avoid greed in all its forms, for your life is not made more secure by what you own, even when you have more than you need." Then Jesus told them a parable in these words. There was a rich farmer who had a good harvest. "What will I do?" he mused. "I have no place to store my grain. I know. I will pull down my grain bins and build larger ones. All my grain and goods will go in there. Then I'll say to myself, you have many blessings in reserve for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to the farmer, "You fool, this very night your life will be required of you. To whom will all your piled up wealth go?" This is the way it works with people who accumulate riches for themselves, but are not rich in God. And this is the gospel, the good news of our salvation.
Praise you, God.
By the words of the gospel, may our sins be blotted out.
Amen.
So once again, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good for us to be here. We gather this morning, and I mentioned at the very beginning about being possessed. I remember many years ago in Brooklyn, I was teaching, and there was a good friend of mine who was a sister of mercy. And one of her favorite expressions was that kids possessed. And there were some of our young men and women who truly were in another place. They were possessed. And we hear that a lot, for example, in that movie, The Exorcist, about being possessed by an evil spirit. This morning we're going to mention a couple of people who were truly possessed by God. Today is the feast day of St. Ignatius Loyola. Why is that name important? Anybody?
Jesuits.
He founded
The Jesuits. Okay. He was born in 1491, died in 1556. And Ignatius was an aristocrat, was involved in many hand-to-hand combats with enemies or hostility. And as he was recovering from a particular ailment that he had, he realized that he was not possessed by the presence of God. He realized that what he was doing wasn't helping him at all in his relationship with other people. In fact, it was causing some problems because of the manner in which he was involved in warfare, obviously. So he began what's referred to as the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. And it seems that right now in the Roman Church, we have a Jesuit, the first Jesuit, who was the Pope, Francis. And Francis leads me into talking about our Father Francis. Francis of Assisi was also possessed. At one time, he was possessed with everything that was opposed to what God was all about. eat, drink, be merry, relax, and this was Francis's way of life. Until he encountered the presence of God after also being in battle, as Ignatius was. And in his year in the prison, in the dungeon somewhere in Perugia. Okay. We go back and forth. And Francis had a tremendous devotion to Mary, Mother of God, Mother of Jesus, Mother of God. And there was a special place where the brothers gathered, and it was referred to as the place of Our Lady of the Angels. And Francis named it the little portion, the place where he was very comfortable with. And in fact, if any of you have been into Assisi, in the Basilica of St. Francis, in this basilica, there's this little preserved house. That was the place where Francis and the original followers of Francis would gather for prayer. So this is, as I told you before, when you have a faith community that's led by a religious community, you then hear more about things that refer to us as Franciscans, which you probably wouldn't hear any other place. In fact, somebody called me in the middle of the night last night. I mentioned it to Paul. 3:30 in the morning, the phone rings. And it was, oh Lord, I hope it's not the hospital. It was a person who asked, is this St. Francis and Clare? Yes. I need prayers. And I was going to say, I need prayers too, not to scream right now. This is, and it's the truth. People look at us who are Franciscans in a different way because we epitomize the love of Francis, which was for all of creation. Okay? What's the opposite of being possessed by God? The opposite of being possessed by God is self-centeredness, only caring about who me is, looking at what can I do to make myself better, richer, more important. And the two people I spoke about, Ignatius and Francis, were not making themselves more important. What they were doing was showing people that the presence of God is what makes all of us one in God's Spirit. The first reading mentioned the word greed. What does greed do? Greed isolates us from others. How much more can I get for me? How much more am I able to keep my treasures and get even more? And one of the things that we've said before, myself and Father Vinny, is, have you ever seen an armored car following a hearse? Some people think that the only thing they have in this life is what they can see and feel. And the presence of God is what's most important to us. The presence of God, which allows us to be open, which allows us to care for other people, which allows us, as I said at the beginning, to be an instrument of peace. This is what it means to be possessed by God. Is it difficult? No. It's a matter of opening up and letting God truly live within us. And the best example we have of that, obviously, is Jesus, the Son of God, Christ our brother, who came among us for one thing, to show us the way to God. And the reason why he was, frowned upon by the authorities is because he was taken away from them what they thought was important, which was their rulership over people. So each one of us is called very simply, to be a servant of others. There are so many people who are so bound by what they have that they become addicted to what they own. An addiction to money, an addiction to drug, an addiction to lording over other people and not being that servant. And this is what it means to be a follower of Christ, to be a servant to others. The Last Supper, one thing Jesus said to them that's more important than anything else: I give you a new commandment. Not an idea, not a suggestion. The 10 Commandments are great, but I'm giving you another one. Love one another as I have loved you. And that's what we're asked to love, to let God come into who we are, and to allow the generosity of God to flow through us so that people can see who we are and the presence of God within each one of us. Pray for me as I pray for you, and may God bless us and keep us. May God's face shine upon us and give us peace, now and always.
Amen.